go off. I understand. If I could have my camera off, I would. Okay, so letter and email writing. I'm just going to pop the chat up so that I can see if you have any questions as we're going along. And we're going to start with email writing. So often when we open the exam and we are given the question, we want to start straight away and start writing or typing. I would recommend we just wait, read the question and think just 10, 20, 30 seconds before we start writing. I want you to think about three things. We need to consider the purpose, the audience, and the format of the piece that we are being asked to write. And what that means is we need to consider, why are we writing? That's the purpose. Are we writing to complain? Are we writing to give information? Are we writing to persuade? Because the reason that we write may affect how we communicate that information. We need to think about our audience. If we are writing for children, if we're writing for children, we use very simple language. If we are writing to somebody that we work with, we may use language that is a bit more technical. So we need to think about who is going to be reading our piece. And finally, the format. What should it look like? So if we think about those three things before we start, it can help focus and direct our piece. So as part of that, we need to consider, is our email going to be formal or informal? So again, if we think about who we are writing it to, that will tell us whether or not we're being formal or informal. So if it's been written to a company, a professional, or somebody we do not know, it will be formal. If we have a pre-existing relationship with the person we are writing to, then it can potentially be more informal, more relaxed, more friendly. So we can then change our tone. So what does an email look like? For the exam board, all the exam board want you to include four things. I'm bad with maths, not three things, four things. We always need to include the address of the recipient in an email. So they will normally give us an email address to write to. There will always be a bar that says subject, and we've got to input some information in there. It's the same as if I were to send an email out like today after class, I will send an email out. I must have a subject. Otherwise, my computer says, you need to write a subject in here or it won't send. We need to have some kind of salutation or greeting at the beginning of our message. And again, that depends on whether it's formal or informal as to the greeting that we choose. And then corresponding with that, we also have a sign off at the end. So if we are doing something very formal, we may address our reader by saying, dear sir or madam, dear Mr. Smith, dear recruitment manager, dear store manager, and then we end it by saying yours faithfully. If we're writing to a friend, it might just be, hello, Frank. Cheers. See you later. Thanks a lot. Look forward to hearing from you. You know, there are different endings that we can have on an informal email. One of the things I'm hoping to do is to put together some sort of word banks. So words that are associated with formal terms and words that are associated with informal terms. So the next part, how much should we write? Now, I'm aware that when we look at some of the past exam papers, we have two questions, and usually on one of them, it will tell you a word count, and on one, it doesn't. But because the two questions are both worth the same number of marks, they should be the same length of text as well. So at level 1, we should be writing a minimum of 150 words. And at level 2, it says 250 to 350 words. So focus on that minimum of 250. So How much time should I spend writing each piece? We have 1 hour. Both texts, as I said, they're both worth the same number of marks. So they are of equal importance. Equal marks, equal importance. So we need to make sure that before we take our writing exams, we are quite well practiced in timing ourselves to see just how much we can write in 25 to 30 minutes. Split that hour for the exam in half. We have 30 minutes. I would do the majority of the writing for 20 to 25 minutes. And then you have 5 minutes to help plan at the beginning and to check everything at the end. It's not a perfect formula, but it works quite well. So it's just a few things to consider when it comes to writing, in this case, an email. Now, I mentioned we were also going to be looking at writing a letter as well. So I just want to consider those same points. If we're writing a letter, we need to think about the same 3 things. Who we are writing the piece, why we are writing the piece, who we are writing it to, and what it should look like. Again, we just need to think of these things before we start typing. And again, the language. It should be a signature at the end of the letter. How can it be created? I will show you, Dr. Vic. I will show you. Because obviously, on a paper letter, yes, we would sign it. On a letter, on a computer, it's going to be different. I will show you. I will show you. So again, depending on who we are writing it to, depends whether or not the tone itself is going to be quite formal or informal. And the same rules apply. Whether you're writing an email or a letter or an article, any of them. Who is going to be reading the piece? Because that dictates whether or not we are going to be formal, high register language, unemotional, whether we're going to be professional, or we'll be informal, relaxed, friendly. Now, I thought about this. So I said I want to make a word bank, examples of formal and informal terms. In the meantime, I did put this together. So what choices can you make to show the level of formality? So if you're writing a formal piece, you should state your facts clearly and concisely. That means giving all of the information that's needed without anything extra or extraneous to it. We need to be polite, but not over familiar, not over friendly. We want to avoid emotive language because a formal document is a professional document. We want to avoid slang and jargon. So any of those words and phrases that are specifically used in our geographical locations. So I know we've said before in a couple of the lessons that depending where we are in the country, we have different words for the same product. So where I live, we have bread in a piece like this is a bread cake. Go 10 miles one way, it's a bap. Go 10 miles another way, it's a cob or a stotty or a tea cake or a roll. So we need to try to use sort of universal terms, universal language. And I still think bread cake is the best. Avoiding any jargon. So we need to assume that our readers, we want to avoid technical language or anything that would need a huge amount of explanation. Stick with simple, clear, concise words and phrases. And then the last one for formal language is to avoid shortened or abbreviated words. So for those of you that came to the punctuation lesson last week, it's avoiding the words where we use an apostrophe to shorten it. Cannot turns to can't. Can't is that abbreviated form. Should not is the formal. Shouldn't is the informal. Again, I'll be putting together a list of a lot of these so you can see for yourselves. So we use the full versions of words. On the other hand, if we're writing anything informal, everything that I've said in that first part that we should avoid, we can use those. We are free to use them. If the piece that you're writing is informal, we can use all of these techniques. If you're being informal, you can be open, you can be friendly, you can write about emotions, you can write with descriptive terms. Even if it's regarding an unhappy matter, so say you're writing to a friend to say how poor something is, I don't know, your town, your council, something like that. Even if it's a negative thing you're talking about, you can still use some of these happy, friendly terms. So the next part, what should a letter look like? Now, what I'm actually going to do, because I realise that on your screens this might be very, very small, a letter should include certain layout features. So from the top to the bottom, right at the very top. In fact, let me just share a bigger version of the same document, just so you can see it a little better on your screens. There we go. So this is one of the documents you may have seen before, where I have given examples of how they should all look. And the letter is this one. So from the very top, we start with making sure that our address is the first thing. And we use the same convention for writing an address, where we start with what is our specific house or flat number. Then we go to our street. Then we go to our village. Then we go to our town, our county, and then our postcode. So we start at the specific property, then we look at the street, and we move out and out. And every time we go from street to village to town, we go on the next line down. So I imagine it that we are zooming in, we are focusing on a house, and then as we step back, we see the street, we go further back. It's like zooming out on like Google Maps. So the first thing, we always start with our house or flat number or name, the street or road, avenue, whatever it is you live on. If there is a village or an area within that sort of postal district, so you could say Walkley, one of the areas. Okay, so this is the village. Then we have the town or city, and then we have the postcode. You can, if necessary, include the county as well. But after that, it starts to get a little bit excessive. If we are within the UK and sending a letter to somebody else within the UK, we don't need to include like the word England, for example. So once we have written our address, we need to then think, okay, where is our letter going to? And in this case, again, as always, I just made it up. In this case, it's the offices for Sheffield Council. They are on Main Street, which is in the centre of Sheffield, and then we have a postcode. Once we've done that, we leave a line empty. And you can see the last time I wrote on this was the 13th of May. Let's make it a little more up to date. So then we have our date. And then it's not necessary, but I think some people find it helpful if we have a subject. So it's something that gives an overview, an idea of what the contents of the letter are going to be. So if we were writing to complain, we would literally write something like a complaint regarding train times, complaint regarding bin collection, complaint regarding whatever. It's so that whoever opens it can see if it is relevant to them or if it needs to go to a different department. Then again, we leave a line empty, and then we have our introduction. So this is our greeting, our salutation to the person that we are writing to. And you can see I have color-coded these with their corresponding sign-offs at the end. So if we don't know their name, we would write Dear Sir or Madam. If we know their job title, we could say Dear Manager, Dear Editor. Or we may know their name, and in which case we say Dear Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, whatever. After that, we leave a line. And then we would start thinking about the actual content of the letter that we're writing. So this is where we need to use our imagination and the question from the exam paper to work out what we are writing. We have a short introduction where we can often use the words in the exam question, but we use their words where they say, write about this. So the first thing you say is, I am writing about this. And you can use the wording from the question to explain that. There are usually, on the exam paper, 3 specific topics they want you to write about. So after the introduction, we cover the first aspect, the first topic they want us to write about, then the second, and then the third. And once we've completed that and written enough for each part, we would write our conclusion. And for that, I always think, so what? The conclusion is our chance to tell our reader what we want from them. For example, if I was writing to complain about the train times, then my conclusion may say that I want some compensation, I want a refund, I want my money back, I want better signposting or better communication from the train company. It's where we state what we want. Then we find our appropriate ending. So if we have started our letter by using their name, if we know their name, if we are familiar, we can use yours sincerely. To be sincere means to be honest. And we are only honest to that extent. We are only sincere with the people that we have a personal relationship with, those whose names we know. If they are somewhat anonymous, if we only know them as sir, madam, manager, editor, if that's the case, we have to have faith that they will respond to us. So we can use something like yours faithfully. Best wishes, best regards. And then Dr. Vic, you asked about the signature. After we say yours sincerely or best regards, yours faithfully, we leave a few lines. Because if I was to physically print this onto a piece of paper, this space is where my signature would be. So I would print it, I would sign it, I would put it in an envelope. Just by showing this empty space, we show that we understand where that signature would be. Even if we cannot physically draw it on the on the computer screen, it still shows we understand we should sign here. But technology and pen, we can't in the exams. So that's what you do. You show that you understand we need it, even if it's absent. So just you show a gap. That's it. So if I just stop sharing that one and then just come back into this one, and then excuse me for a second while I just go back to where we were. Here we go. So you will actually get marked on how close to this sort of format you can get in the exam. They will check on the mark scheme in the answer book. They will say, have they included their own address? Yes, Dr. Vic, you probably can. In the exam, every other website is locked down. So you can't during the exam. If I show you just a second. In fact, I'll show you at the end. We're coming to do a real exam at the end. I have a little thing for my signature where, see, it's a bit dusty. I have like a stylus, and this connects to my computer so I can do my signature. But these days you can just don't need to. So, should you plan before you start writing? Yes. Allow yourselves just a couple of minutes before you start writing. So allow the question that you've read, allow yourself time to understand it, to think about what ideas you could write about, what perspective or point of view you're going to address the scenario from. Have a think about your own experience. If the question is asking you about something to do with your local council, consider your own experience, because it does make it easier to write about if you've had similar experience yourself in the past. So always give yourself just 1 or 2 minutes, read the question, think. You can make notes if you like. At the end of the exam, you do have to tear up your notes, but that's fine. And then write your answer. When you've written your answer to the exams, a few things to check again before you submit it. So it's things like checking your spelling, punctuation, and grammar. For example, the punctuation that you've used may be correct. Have you used enough different types? For those of you that were in the punctuation lesson last week, we said that at level 1, you need to have the basics covered. Full stops, capital letters at the beginning of sentences, commas, some but not all apostrophes, things like that. At level 2, you need to have all of those. And could you use a colon? Could you use a hyphen? Could you use, quotation marks? Could you use contraction and possession apostrophes? There's a range. So it's worth looking at the piece that you've written and said, okay, so what can I do to potentially improve this? What can I do to potentially make this better? The next part. Oh yeah, is the piece in order? If, for example, we're writing about a problem, I'll go back to the complaint issue. If we are writing about a complaint, we need to make sure we explain what the problem is at the beginning. Then we can talk about how it's affected us. Then we can talk about what resolution we want. So we need to sort of make it not perfectly chronological, but you've got to talk about the things in the right order. Ooh. So we need to ensure it has a correct beginning, a middle, and an end. That's it. So we're going to have a look at some examples. And the examples that I've chosen are all from past exam papers. And if I do this way, here we go. So this particular one is actually a level 1 exam paper. It's from about 6 years ago. It was only pulled out of sort of the rotation from the exam board fairly recently. So this one says, we are writing, in this case, an email to a friend. Okay, so already I've seen the word email and I think, okay, I know what I need to include. It's to a friend. Friend, friendly, informal, polite, positive. Okay. Your town holds an annual music festival. Last year, you attended and had a great time. This year, you'd like to invite a friend who lives in another town to visit and enjoy the festival with you. Write an email persuading your friend to come. And then they used to do this. They don't put pictures on anymore, but they would give you pictures as inspiration. Then it says, here we go. Look, they have already given you a template. It does look ever so slightly different. Oh, I can't remember which ones are. Let's have a look. One day I will know and understand every single one of these. Report and article, so it's not number 1. But until then, I need to check them every time I go on. So level 2, what's this one? A letter and an article. No. And then we've got a, come on, give me an email. Email. So when writing an email for on the live exams, it would look similar to this. So we have the question at the top, and then we are given an email address that we can just copy and paste into there. We have the subject, which in this case was something like a music festival. And then we just have this great big box to write in. I think sometimes when we see these sort of templates on the exam board site, it's very easy because we're not using Microsoft Word or Google Docs that we're used to, because it looks slightly different. We forget certain things. But if this was an email, then of course we're going to start writing it by saying, dear, John, whoever in this case the friend is. So they do look ever so slightly different from the one that we're looking at here, but you can see we still get that template. We still get that as a reminder of what we need to include. If there is a box here that says to, we need to put their email address in. If there is an empty box that says subject, we need to put a subject in there. It is a prompt to remind us. So if we think about those three things to start with, our purpose, audience, and format. Our purpose. It says that we are persuading our friend to come. That is our purpose. That is the reason why we are writing. We are writing to persuade them. We want them to think the same as us. So in this case, this says that the music festival was great. We want them to think it's great. We want them to come with us. Okay. So our purpose is to persuade. Our audience, in this case, is an unnamed friend. So because of that, we can choose what name we're writing it to. It doesn't make any difference. Male, female, whatever name you want. And then the format for this one, because we are given that template, it makes it that little bit easier. We don't need to think too much about what information goes where, because it tells us. You write the address here, you write the subject here. All we really need to remember is to say hello and greet our reader at the beginning, and to say goodbye at the very end. Now, if I just have a quick look, just going to check, not that one. It's a level 1. I'm just having a look to see if the electronic version of the paper that we're looking at today is on here, just so I can write it on the screen and make it as close to the real exam as possible. Oh, writing. Maybe it's the email that we're looking for. Does it tell me on the top of the exam paper which exam it is? It should. Sorry, no matter how many times and how well I prepare for a lesson, there is always something that's not quite right. So this one's a sample assessment, 6035058. No, 603. So it's a sample. So level 1. Email. So good start. Is it the same one? No, it's slightly different. Okay, we'll have a go at this one instead, just so that we can see how we write the answers and how we frame everything. So it's a different question. This one is technically a level 1 exam, so we need to be writing in the region of 150 words. However, let's see if we can get to that 250 and show you what a level 2 would look like, because that realistically is one of the main differences between level 1 and level 2 when it comes to writing. The length of the text that you're asked to write, and trying to use things like the more complex punctuation, the higher level language skills as well. So this one says, you share a house with 2 other people. One of your friends is moving out, so you need to find a new housemate. You have a friend who is looking for somewhere to live. You decide to write an email to them about the spare room. In your email, we can, and then we are given 3 things, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and paragraph 3. Address your email to, and we are given an email address. We are not given a name, so we can invent that name. And look, we're given a subject bar, and then we have the blank box in which to write. So I'm thinking, right, my purpose again is to persuade them. I want to persuade them that coming to live in my house share would be a wonderful idea. It would be a positive start for them. My audience in this case is a friend, so I can keep my language nice and informal. And the format is an email that is already on the template. So as long as I complete the box that says address and subject, then it should be okay. Format-wise, it should look right. So what are my first ideas? Let's have a think. So I explain why your housemate is moving out. Describe the house, garden, and the surrounding area. Persuade your friend that the house share would be ideal. Okay. So I'm going to take those 3 bullet points and I'm going to put them onto here. And I'm just going to put an introduction as my first one. Explain why they're moving out as my first paragraph. Describe the house, garden, and surrounding area as the second main paragraph. Persuade your friend that the house share is ideal for them, conclusion, and then end it by, saying, I hope to hear from you soon. And then let's say hello to them at the beginning. Hi, Billy. So it said, one of your housemates is moving out. You have a friend who is looking for somewhere to live. So I'm going to make it sound as realistic as possible. I'm going to start it with something like, last week we were talking about the fact you are looking for a new place to live. Well, it seems that you are indeed very lucky. And then I'm going to use a rhetorical question, a question that doesn't require an answer, but enables our reader to think about their answer. So I'm going to say, guess who has a room coming up available to rent next month? Yes, it's me. Okay, so we're basically saying the situation is you're looking for a room to rent. Then I'm saying I have a room to rent. Okay, so I'm going to explain now why my housemate is moving out. So again, I'm going to come up with a name. I'm going to say Michelle in the attic bedroom will be moving in with her boyfriend to his flat in Doncaster. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the room that I'm renting. Obviously, I'm going to choose a reason that sort of aligns with my overall idea. If we're trying to persuade this person that they want to stay with me, I'm not going to say that Michelle is leaving the room because of rats or damp or, something like that. So Michelle in the attic bedroom will be moving in with her boyfriend to his flat in Doncaster. It'll be sad to see her go, but it's closer to her work and it's a nice step for them to take together as a couple, you know. They've been boyfriend, girlfriend, now they're living together. Nice. Okay. Now, this is going to be my favourite part. I'm going to describe the house, garden, and surrounding area. So I'm thinking, what are the things that I would look for if I was to rent a room in somebody's house? I want something clean. I want something spacious. I want something private. I want a big garden. I want a clean kitchen. Oh, I want space for my imaginary dog. I want, you know, so think about all the things that I would want, and I'm going to say they're in this house. So, I know you visited once before, but it was a long time ago, and I've made some improvements to the house. There, all of the communal areas have recently been redecorated and are kept lovely and clean. We have a cleaner who comes in once a week to freshen things up and stop the spider webs becoming too crazy. I have landscaped the rear garden. So now we have a barbecue and patio area, as well as a greenhouse and vegetable bed. If you want a part of the vegetable area to grow your own produce, just let me know. On a personal note, this week I harvested a cauliflower from my garden that was this big, and it was beautiful. Simple things that make me smile. So what's the next bit and the question and the surrounding area? So the house is close to town, but so you can walk into the centre pretty quickly, but is also close to both bus and train routes. Getting in to the city is easy. Okay, now we're already on 236 words. So as a level 1 piece, you can see that already I've only addressed 2 of the points that they wanted to talk about, and already I've gone way over. Now, I have tried to put in as much detail as possible about, I mean, it's not necessary to say we have a cleaner, but I think it makes it sound more realistic. I mean, okay, maybe not having a cleaner, maybe that's not realistic, but I'm trying to think of things that would appeal to somebody who is looking for a new place to live. So after that, it just asks us to write, persuade them that the house share would be ideal for them. And I'm going to put that into my conclusion. So the attic room is yours if you want it. The rent includes all bills. So let's just put gas, electric, broadband, and council tax. Gas, electric, water. Oh, water. Water's a big one. Broadband and council tax. And even the cleaner. So the attic room is yours if you want it. The rent includes all bills. And the room will have a professional clean before After, what did I call her? Was it Michelle, the previous tenant? Yeah. After Michelle leaves. I think you would love it. We have meals together once or twice a week, so we can all explore our culinary skills. I think you would love it. We'll have meals together once or twice a week, so we can all explore our culinary skills together. If you're interested, please let me know, and we can meet for a coffee. And a chat. I hope to hear from you soon, Alex. Okay. So we are on 299 words. I knew just from reading that question that I would find a part of that especially easy, because I think, especially if I'm going to talk about something like a garden, I do get a little bit over enthusiastic about those. I understand not everybody looking at a house share would be interested in growing their own vegetables, but it makes it sound a bit more personal, a bit more realistic. Is one of the problems that we have when writing these exams, when writing the answers to them, is to use things that are very generic and say, I have a room to rent. It is very nice. It is very clean. It is in this area, which is good for transport. Fine. But it doesn't sound like we understand that we're writing to a friend. It doesn't sound like we understand what that friend is looking for in their place to live. So we need to consider some of these more sort of extraneous and all these added on bits that make it sound real. You'll find as well, if any of you ever use AI for any writing, either in work or in life, so like ChatGPT, things like that, it is brilliant for writing things. However, it's all very impersonal and Americanized. They use a lot of American versions of, spellings of words, things like that. But they come across as very bland. When we ask a computer, when we ask artificial intelligence to write anything, it has no personality. It has no emotions. And sometimes that's what makes writing good. In this case, we are writing to a friend. So think about how we speak to our friends. Think about the way that conversation naturally goes. I've tried so far to include things like statements, exclamation marks, rhetorical questions, informal language, things that indicate to an outside reader that this is an informal piece of text. Now, I had a couple of minutes just to think through some ideas and plan a little bit to start with. I have written the main body of the text. If this was a real exam, I would go on to the second question and do that before coming back and doing what we're going to do now. Now, if I just show you, in fact, do I have a mark scheme? See if I can find the right one. Here we go. So this is a level 2 mark scheme. This is a level 2 answer booklet from the exam board. So we can see the first thing that we're going to get marked on is our email the appropriate length. Is it 150 words for level 1 or 250 words plus for level 2? And the answer in this case, we can see it right from, oh, where's it gone? Here. The word count, 299. Brilliant. Okay. Now we have to think about how much detail and how clear it is. And this is whether or not we have basically answered those 3 points in the question. Have we, and where was it? Have we explained to the why the housemate is moving out? Yes. Have we described the house, garden and surrounding area? Yes. And I've even done it as 3 separate paragraphs rather than one large. Have I persuaded the friend that the house share would be ideal for them? I think so. I know there is going to be enough detail just from looking at the word count. If I had done the minimum of 250 words and I've answered everything the exam board wants me to look at, that's okay, but it's not going to be very detailed. In this case, to score the highest mark for this aspect, 4 marks, it would need to be very detailed, communicates everything clearly, and the text fully meets the needs of the purpose and audience. So is it persuasive? And am I writing to a friend? If both of those things are clear to the examiner, you would potentially get 4 marks. And that's added on to the 1 that we get just for writing enough words. Now, the next thing is looking at the format. So the exam board will have a look at this little list and they will think, okay, how many of these have they used them all? If they have used the recipient's address, the subject title, the salutation, and the close, then you can potentially get another 3 marks. If you've attempted to do that, or maybe you've put things in the wrong order, maybe you've not done something so clearly, you could get 2 marks. If, again, you've tried, if you've got some attempt at structure, but it doesn't allow for communication, so if everything's in the wrong place and it's confusing to read, again, you could still score 1 mark. So again, that would be added to the 5 marks we've already got. And then we look at the next part. Is our language and register fully suited to our audience and purpose? Therefore, I am writing an informal email. Is my language informal? Yes. Is my tone, is my register friendly and warm and persuasive? Yes. I get 2 marks. Again, if I attempted that and it was only mostly suited, you'd still score 1 mark. So again, with all of these things, it's about trying as much as you can, and then you get marks based on how successful you are in these areas. The next bit asks about, have you used paragraphs? So have you got your pieces of information separate? And in our case, yes, we actually did it better than sort of their basic expectation of having, just a second, we have our introduction, very short, but it works. We have our first paragraph explaining why the housemate is gone, or is going. We have 3 paragraphs, one about the house, one about the garden, and one about its location. And then we have our conclusion at the end. So this is stating what we want from, in this case, the friend Billy, I think it was. So if we've used good paragraphs, if we've used a range of sentence types, again, we have a separate lesson on sentence types, and I don't want to try to go into a detail with it now because we probably don't have time as part of this. But if we use the range of sentence types, and to show you an example, we have a word here that is 1 word. Technically, that's a sentence because it makes sense grammatically. Starts with a capital letter, it ends with appropriate punctuation, and it conveys a clear message. Even this one, it's me. Again, it starts with a capital letter. This is very short, but it's a sentence. We even have things like, in this case, this is a subordinate clause that's in there. We have simple sentences, we have compound, we have complex. Again, we have a separate lesson on those. If we have used a little bit of everything, again, we score another 3 marks to add to our total. After that, we can score potentially 3 marks for spelling, 3 marks for punctuation, and 3 marks for grammar. And then we add everything up to see how many marks we have total. So for spelling, again, to get our highest mark possible, your spelling would need to be accurate. You can make mistakes as long as they don't include homophones, those words where we have 2 spellings for the same sounding word, but they may have different meanings, because that would change the meaning of what we're trying to say. You need to spell words with complex sound or symbol relationships. So ensuring that if we are using things like hyphenated words, they're hyphenated in the correct place. Or if we are, let's think, words with unstressed syllables, making sure we could spell words like environment or government, they have a silent letter, the N, government, environment. It's making sure that even though we don't necessarily pronounce the letter, we can still write it correctly. Ensuring that prefixes, suffixes are correct. So, for example, we have our root word would be something like happy. A prefix is something that goes on the beginning. So, unhappy, for example. A suffix is part that goes on the end of the root word. So, happiness, for example. So it's ensuring that if we do have a word that we need to have either a prefix or a suffix on, it is correct. And yes, you can still have errors. With punctuation, we said that we needed a range of them at level 1. At level 2, if you use any of these, we need to ensure that they are used correctly. Things like colons, commas, inverted commas, apostrophes, and question marks. And then the last one is grammar. Probably the hardest one to explain because grammar is so, the rules change. It's ensuring that we have things like subject, verb, agreement. And if we are talking in a particular tense, that we continue that we are consistent with it. So you wouldn't say, I have walked, no, I have walk dog, because walk, if we say I have, we are talking about the past. Therefore, the variation, the conjugation of walk would be walked to talk about the past of it. So we need to ensure that if we are talking in a specific tense, it is consistent throughout. As well as things like definite and indefinite articles. Essentially, what they're looking for is clarity. They want to be able to read something and understand it. They want to give you the suggestion of the scenario, the story for you to write about. They want you to understand that question. They want you to write something that they can then understand themselves. So we've had a look at the layout and the layout of both emails and of letters. As always, I will share everything with you. What means one-off? Occasional. A one-off mistake. Like, for example, me, I never make mistakes unless it's a one-off. It means like we are allowed maybe one or two mistakes, but like a mistake in isolation. One-off is a very informal term. I'm surprised they use that on the exam board mark scheme because it is very, very informal. So I am going to stop recording.